Felicia's eyes snap open to unfamiliar ceiling beams. Dark wood, expensive, nothing like her cramped studio apartment in Oakland. Her heart races as she realizes she's stretched across a massive leather couch in what looks like a penthouse. A cashmere blanket she definitely didn't fall asleep with is draped over her body, the fabric so soft it feels like a cloud against her skin. The floor-to-ceiling windows reveal the glittering skyline of San Francisco's Pacific Heights neighborhood. Dawn is breaking over the bay, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Her phone shows 6:47 a.m. Panic sets in immediately, flooding her system with adrenaline. The last thing she remembers is sitting on this couch during what was supposed to be a quick 15-minute break while installing custom sound equipment for a private client. She'd been working 3 jobs to keep her late mother's medical debt from crushing her completely, and falling asleep on a client's furniture could get her fired from the installation company. She couldn't afford to lose another income stream. Her tools are neatly arranged on the coffee table. Someone had organized them while she slept. The realization makes her skin prickle with embarrassment and something else she can't quite name. Fear, maybe, or confusion about why a stranger would show such care. She hears footsteps approaching from somewhere deeper in the penthouse. A man emerges from what appears to be a kitchen area, carrying 2 coffee cups. He's tall, sharp-featured, unmistakably Korean, probably in his early 30s. He's wearing a simple black shirt that somehow looks more expensive than anything she's ever owned, paired with dark slacks that fit him perfectly. His hair is styled but slightly tousled, like he's been awake for a while. Min-Jun, the client. She remembers his name from the work order. His expression is unreadable as he sets 1 coffee cup on the table near her. His movements are precise, controlled, like someone who's used to being watched and judged. "You were exhausted," he says simply, his voice calm but carrying an edge of authority that makes her sit up straighter despite her disorientation. "I didn't want to wake you." Felicia stammers an apology, mortified, scrambling to gather her tools. Her hands shake slightly as she reaches for her wire strippers, nearly knocking over the coffee he'd brought her. "I'm so sorry. This is completely unprofessional. I don't know what happened. I just sat down for a second and—" "You fell asleep because you needed to," Min-Jun interrupts, his tone leaving no room for argument. "When did you last sleep more than 4 hours?" The question catches her off guard. She blinks at him, her mind racing to calculate. That's not really relevant. I should go. I have another installation job this morning in Palo Alto at 9. But Min-Jun doesn't look angry. He looks concerned, his dark eyes studying her face with an intensity that makes her want to look away. And that confuses her more than anything. Because men like him, wealthy, powerful, connected to circles she's only heard whispers about, don't show concern for girls like her. Girls with second-hand work clothes and scuffed boots. Girls who fall asleep on client couches because they're working themselves into the ground. "Drink the coffee first," he says, and it's phrased like a suggestion but feels like a command. "You installed a $15,000 sound system in my home. The least I can do is make sure you're awake enough to drive safely." Felicia hesitates, then slowly reaches for the cup. The coffee is perfect, the exact amount of cream she likes, though she has no idea how he'd know that. Maybe it's just a lucky guess. She takes a sip and the warmth spreads through her chest, easing some of the tension in her shoulders. "Thank you," she says quietly, finally meeting his eyes. "For the blanket and for not, I don't know, making this weird." Something flickers across Min-Jun's face, amusement, maybe, or recognition. "You worked until almost midnight setting up the system. I came out to offer you dinner and found you unconscious. You looked peaceful. It seemed cruel to disturb that." Felicia doesn't know what to say to that. In her world, exhaustion isn't peaceful. It's just the baseline state of existence. She finishes the coffee in silence while Min-Jun stands by the window, giving her space but not leaving. The morning light catches his profile, and she notices for the first time how tired he looks too. Like maybe he understands what it's like to carry weight that no one else can see. "Your work is exceptional, by the way," he says suddenly. "The acoustics in the media room are exactly what I asked for. Better, actually." Pride swells in her chest despite everything. "I've been doing audio installation for 5 years. It's the one job I actually like." "Why do you have 3 jobs if you're this good at one?" The question is too perceptive, too close to truths she doesn't share with strangers. Felicia stands, gathering the last of her tools and shoving them into her work bag. "Life's expensive in the Bay Area. I should really go." Minjun doesn't push, but he does walk her to the door. Before she leaves, he pulls an envelope from a drawer in the entryway table and hands it to her. "Your payment." Felicia opens it and her eyes widen. It's cash double what she quoted for the job. "This is too much," the estimate was. "You did exceptional work. Keep it," Minjun says firmly. His hand is still extended, and she notices his fingers are long and elegant, the hands of someone who's never done manual labor but probably has other skills. Dangerous skills, maybe. "Consider the extra a bonus for tolerating my schedule. I know the late hours were an inconvenience." She wants to argue, but $2,000 instead of $1,000 means she can make this month's debt payment with a little breathing room. Her pride wars with her desperation, and desperation wins like it always does. "Thank you," she says, and means it. As she rides the bus from Pacific Heights to her apartment in Oakland, she can't shake the image of Minjun watching her leave from his penthouse window. There had been something unreadable in his dark eyes, something that made her skin feel warm despite the cool morning air. She tells herself it doesn't matter. Rich clients are just jobs. She'll probably never see him again. But she's wrong about that. Would you have trusted him in that moment, or would you have run? Let me know in the comments section. Felicia tries to put the strange morning out of her mind as she navigates her packed schedule. After the installation job in Palo Alto, a straightforward speaker set up for a tech executive's home office, she heads to her afternoon shift at a coffee shop in Berkeley. Her feet ache from standing, and she's running on the caffeine from Minjun's perfect coffee and nothing else. By evening, she's at her 3rd job, weekend overnight security monitoring for an office building in downtown Oakland. It's mind-numbing work, watching camera feeds and checking badge logs, but it pays, and the night supervisor lets her study audio engineering tutorials on her laptop during quiet hours. It's during one of these quiet hours, around 2 a.m. on Sunday, that her phone buzzes with a call from a number she's been avoiding for 3 weeks. Her stomach drops as she stares at the screen. Victor Brennan, the debt collector assigned to her mother's hospital bills from the last 6 months of her life. She considers not answering, but Victor has made it clear that avoiding him only makes things worse. With a resigned sigh, she accepts the call. "Ms. Richardson," his voice is cold and professional, devoid of any human warmth. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know, I'm sorry, things have been." "I don't need excuses, Ms. Richardson. I need payment. You're 3 weeks behind on your agreed monthly installment. That's against the terms of your payment plan." Felicia closes her eyes, exhaustion and frustration warring in her chest. "I had an unexpected expense last month. My car needed repairs, and without it I can't get to my jobs. I'll catch up this month, I promise." "Promises don't satisfy debt, Ms. Richardson. You currently owe $47,000 in medical expenses from your mother's final hospital stay. Your payment plan requires monthly installments of $1,000. You've missed September, and now you're late for October. If you don't come up with $12,000 by the end of this month to show good faith, we'll be forced to pursue legal action." $12,000. The number hits her like a physical blow. "That's impossible. I can't." Then we'll begin wage garnishment proceedings. We'll also report the delinquency to credit agencies. Your credit score will tank, which will affect your ability to rent, to get loans, too. I understand. Felicia cuts him off, her voice tight. I'll figure something out. You have until October 31st. That's 12 days, Ms. Richardson. I suggest you figure it out quickly. He hangs up without saying goodbye. Felicia sits in the silent security office, staring at the black and white camera feeds without really seeing them. $12,000 in 12 days. She could work around the clock and still not make that kind of money. Her mother's illness had drained their savings, then drained Felicia's credit, and finally drained her hope. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer doesn't care about your financial situation. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. She thinks about her mother's last words to her in that sterile hospital room. Don't let this debt define you, baby. Promise me you'll live your life, not just survive it. But survival is all Felicia knows how to do anymore. When her shift ends at 6 a.m., she takes the bus back to her studio apartment in a converted warehouse building in Oakland. The neighborhood is gentrifying rapidly, which means her rent keeps increasing while her building's maintenance keeps declining. She unlocks 3 separate locks on her door, a necessity in this area, and steps into her tiny home. It's just one room with a kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a sleeping alcove. But it's hers, and she's made it comfortable with second-hand furniture and string lights that make the space feel less depressing. Her mother's favorite blanket is draped over the thrift store couch. Her audio equipment, the expensive stuff she's invested in over the years, is organized neatly on shelves she built herself. She collapses on the couch, fully intending to shower and sleep, but instead finds herself staring at the ceiling and doing mental math that doesn't add up no matter how she calculates it. That's when she notices the plain envelope that someone has slipped under her door. Felicia's heart rate picks up as she approaches it cautiously. It's thick cream-colored paper, expensive looking. She picks it up and opens it carefully. Inside is a business card, heavy stock, minimalist design. Minjun's name is embossed in simple black letters, along with a phone number and an address in San Francisco's financial district. No company name, no title, just his name. On the back, in elegant handwriting, is a note. If you ever need help, call me. No strings. MJ. Felicia stares at the card for a long time, turning it over and over in her hands. How did he know where she lives? The thought should creep her out, but somehow it doesn't. The installation company has her address on file. He could have gotten it from them. But why would he bother? She thinks about the way he looked at her that morning, the concern in his eyes that seemed genuine. She thinks about the cashmere blanket, the perfect coffee, the extra payment he insisted she keep. There's something there, some connection she doesn't fully understand but can feel humming beneath the surface of their brief interaction. But she also knows that men like Minjun, men with penthouses in Pacific Heights and handwritten notes on expensive cardstock, don't help people for free. There are always strings, even when they say there aren't. She tosses the card on her cluttered desk, next to unpaid bills and audio engineering textbooks. She doesn't need charity, especially not from a man whose entire penthouse smelled of danger wrapped in wealth, whose every movement suggested controlled power, whose eyes held secrets she probably didn't want to know. She'll figure this out on her own. She always does. But as she finally drifts off to sleep on her couch, wrapped in her mother's blanket, she dreams of dark wood ceiling beams and soft cashmere, and dark eyes watching her with unexpected tenderness. A week passes in a blur of work and worry. Felicia picks up every extra shift she can, but the math still doesn't work. By Thursday, she's running on 4 hours of sleep and coffee, her body moving on autopilot through installations and shifts. That's when she gets the call about a rush job, setting up audio for a private dinner event at a mansion in Atherton on Saturday evening. Atherton is one of the wealthiest zip codes in America, home to tech billionaires and old money. The pay for the job is excellent, nearly $1,500 for 6 hours of work, and the client emphasized discretion and professionalism. Felicia accepts immediately. Every dollar counts. Saturday evening, she arrives at the estate just before sunset. The property is breathtaking, all modern architecture and manicured gardens that probably require a full-time staff. The main house is a sprawling single-story structure with walls of glass that blur the line between inside and outside. She can see pieces of expensive art on the walls, furniture that belongs in magazines. She's directed to the service entrance by a security guard who checks her ID against a list. As she unloads her equipment, she notices other workers arriving, caterers, additional security, a woman who appears to be an event coordinator barking instructions into a headset. "You're the audio tech?" A young man in all black approaches her. "I'm Daniel, the event coordinator's assistant. We need speakers in the main dining hall, the outdoor patio, and the private lounge. All zones need to be controllable independently, but from one central system." "Not a problem," Felicia confirms. "I'll need about 4 hours for proper setup and testing." "You have 3. Guests arrive at 8. Felicia doesn't argue. She just gets to work, moving efficiently through the space. The main dining hall is stunning, a long table set for 12 with crystal and china that probably costs more than her annual income. She installs discrete speakers in the corners, running cables through the walls with practiced ease. The outdoor patio is next, overlooking a pool that glows turquoise in the gathering dusk. Silicon Valley sprawls in the distance, a carpet of lights. She's mounting the final outdoor speaker when she hears voices from inside the house. One of them is familiar. Felicia's hands still on the speaker mount. She tells herself she's imagining it, that stress and exhaustion are making her hear things. But then she hears it again, that calm, authoritative tone that had offered her coffee and watched her with concerned eyes. Minjun is here. She finishes mounting the speaker quickly and moves to the next task, trying to ignore the way her heart has started beating faster. It's just a coincidence. Atherton isn't that big. Wealthy people run in the same circles. It doesn't mean anything. But as she's running cables through the main living area toward the private lounge, she can't help but glance through an open doorway. And there he is. Minjun is seated in a private lounge area with 3 other men, older, sharper, clearly important. They're all Korean, all wearing expensive suits despite the informal setting. A tea service sits on the low table between them, delicate cups and a ceramic pot that looks ancient and valuable. They're speaking in Korean, and even without understanding the language, Felicia can sense the tension in the room. One man, silver-haired, probably in his 60s, raises his voice slightly, gesturing emphatically. Minjun's response is quiet, controlled, but the older man goes silent immediately, bowing his head in what looks like deference or apology. Another man, younger but still older than Minjun, speaks next. His tone is challenging, almost aggressive. Minjun doesn't raise his voice, doesn't change his relaxed posture, but something in his energy shifts, becomes harder, more dangerous. The challenging man backs down. Felicia realizes she's starring and quickly ducks back behind the wall, her pulse hammering. She shouldn't be seeing this. Whatever this meeting is about, it's clearly private and important and none of her business. She finishes the cable run quickly, focusing on the work and trying not to think about Minjun sitting just 1 room away. She moves to the private lounge, thankfully empty now, the meeting having moved outside to the patio, and installs the final set of speakers. She's packing up her tools when footsteps approach. She looks up and her breath catches. Minjun stands in the doorway of the lounge, surprise flickering across his face before his expression smooths into something softer, almost warm. He's changed into a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, with a black shirt underneath. He looks like power and money and danger all wrapped up in one devastatingly attractive package. Felicia, her name in his mouth sounds different than when other people say it. You're everywhere. She manages a smile despite her racing heart. I go where the work is. He steps into the room, and she's reminded of how tall he is. How he moves with a predator's grace. How have you been? Busy, she says, which is the understatement of the year. You. The same. His gaze lingers on her face, searching for something. Have you thought about my offer? The business card, the note. If you ever need help, call me. Felicia swallows hard. I don't take handouts. It wasn't a handout. It was an offer of friendship. Minjun takes another step closer, and she catches his scent, something expensive and subtle, cedar and bergamot. You helped me create the perfect space in my home. I'd like to help you if you're struggling. How does he know she's struggling? Is it that obvious? The thought makes shame burn in her chest. I'm fine, really, but thank you. Before Minjun can respond, one of the men from the meeting calls out in Korean from somewhere outside. His tone is sharp, impatient. Minjun's expression shifts, the warmth disappearing behind a mask of careful neutrality. He responds in Korean, his voice carrying easily, and the other man goes quiet. He turns back to Felicia and nods once. It was good to see you again. Then he walks away, leaving her standing there with her equipment and more questions than answers. She watches him go, noticing how the other workers give him a wide berth, how even the security guards straighten when he passes. Who is Minjun, really? And why does he keep appearing in her life like fate is trying to tell her something she's not ready to hear? Felicia's world collapses on a rainy Tuesday, 5 days before the deadline Victor Brennan gave her. She's let go from the coffee shop job due to company restructuring, which is code for, we're cutting costs and you're expendable. They give her 2 weeks severance, which is generous by service industry standards, but nowhere near enough to solve her problems. The loss of income means she's now definitely short on the debt payment. She does the math over and over, hoping it'll somehow change. It doesn't. Even with the extra money from Minjun's installation and the Atherton event, she's still $4,000 short of what Victor demanded. That night after her security shift, Felicia sits in her apartment and stares at the stack of bills on her desk. Medical debt, rent, utilities, student loans from the 2 years of community college she managed before her mother got sick. It's all too much, an avalanche that keeps growing no matter how fast she runs. She thinks about calling Minjun. The business card sits right there on her desk, cream-colored and embossed, a lifeline she's too proud to grab. No, she won't do it. She can't start owing people like him. People with power and secrets and meetings where tension crackles like electricity. But Wednesday evening, her resolve wavers when Victor Brennan shows up at her apartment in person. Felicia opens the door to find him standing there with a legal assistant, both of them in dark suits that make them look like funeral directors. Victor is in his 40s, with thinning hair and cold blue eyes that have probably watched 1,000 people squirm. Ms. Richardson, he says, not bothering with pleasantries, may we come in? She doesn't want to let them in, doesn't want them seeing her small space and her second-hand furniture and her mother's blanket on the couch. But she also knows that making this harder won't help. She steps aside. Victor and his assistant don't sit. They stand in her small living area, making the space feel even more cramped. The assistant opens a briefcase and pulls out papers. As I informed you on the phone, Victor begins, you have failed to meet the terms of your payment agreement. We've given you multiple opportunities to catch up, and you've failed to do so. Therefore, we're proceeding with legal action. The assistant hands Felicia papers. Her hands shake as she takes them. The words blur together: wage garnishment, legal fees, court proceedings, credit reporting. We'll need to garnish 30% of all your wages from all your employment sources, Victor continues, his tone matter-of-fact, like he's discussing the weather and not destroying her life. We've also filed reports with the major credit bureaus. Your credit score has dropped to 420. This will affect your ability to rent, to secure loans, to... I understand, Felicia cuts him off, her voice barely above a whisper. Is there any way to stop this? I can get you some of the money by Friday, maybe $3,000. Would that? The deadline was $12,000 by October 31st. Partial payment won't stop the legal proceedings at this point. You should have communicated your inability to pay before the deadline passed. The deadline is 2 days away. Felicia's voice rises despite her efforts to stay calm. You said I had until the 31st. That's Friday. Victor's expression doesn't change. The deadline for prevention was today. The 31st is when the garnishment begins. I apologize if that wasn't clear. He's not sorry. Felicia can see it in his cold eyes. This is just business to him. Her mother's death, her exhaustion, her desperation, none of it matters. She's just another file, another number, another person who couldn't pay. After they leave, Felicia sits on her couch in the dark and finally lets herself fall apart. She cries for her mother, who worked her whole life and died drowning in medical bills anyway. She cries for herself, for the future that's slipping away with every garnished paycheck and every hit to her credit score. She cries because she's so tired of being tired, so sick of fighting a battle she can't win. When the tears finally stop, she's empty, hollow, and in that emptiness a realization settles. She's out of options, she's out of pride, she's out of everything except one last possibility. She picks up Minjun's business card. The card feels heavier than it should in her hands. She stares at the elegant handwriting on the back. If you ever need help, call me. No strings. Does she believe that? No strings. There are always strings. But maybe some strings are easier to untangle than others. Maybe some debts are less crushing than the one currently destroying her life. Thursday night, desperate and out of options, she finds herself standing outside the Pacific Heights penthouse, finger hovering over the buzzer. The building is just as imposing as she remembers, all sleek glass and security cameras. Her reflection in the polished doors shows a woman who looks half dead with exhaustion, her hair pulled into a messy bun, her work clothes rumpled. She almost leaves, almost turns around and figures she'll just let the garnishment happen, let her credit tank, let her life spiral further into chaos. It would be easier than asking for help, easier than admitting she can't do this alone. But then she thinks about her mother saying, "Don't let this debt define you, baby." She presses the buzzer. There's a long pause. Then Minjun's voice comes through the intercom, surprised. "Felicia." Can we talk?" Her voice sounds small and broken even to her own ears. Another pause. "Come up." The door buzzes, and she enters the building, riding the elevator to the penthouse level with her heart in her throat. The doors open directly into Minjun's entryway, and he's standing there waiting for her. He's dressed casually, black joggers and a fitted gray shirt that shows off his lean, muscular frame. His hair is slightly damp, like he recently showered. He looks comfortable and human, and somehow that makes this harder. "I was just leaving for a meeting," he says, studying her face with those dark, perceptive eyes. "But it can wait. What happened?" The genuine concern in his voice breaks something in her. The carefully constructed walls she's been maintaining for weeks crumble all at once. The story spills out: her mother's cancer, the astronomical medical bills, the payment plan she couldn't maintain, Victor Brennan and the garnishment, and the destroyed credit, and the impossible situation she's trapped in. Minjun listens without interrupting. He doesn't look shocked or uncomfortable or pitying. He just listens, his full attention on her like her problems matter, like she matters. When she finishes, she feels wrung out and exposed. "I'm sorry," she says, wiping at her eyes. "I shouldn't have come here. I don't even know why I did. You probably can't help anyway, and I don't want." "Come inside," Minjun says quietly. Felicia hesitates. "You're meeting." "Can wait. Come inside, Felicia." She follows him into the penthouse, back to that same leather couch where this all started, where she fell asleep exhausted and woke up covered in cashmere. It feels like a lifetime ago. Minjun disappears into the kitchen while Felicia sits rigidly on the couch, her hands clasped in her lap. She feels like she's vibrating with tension. Every muscle tight with stress and fear and uncertainty. What is she doing here? What does she expect him to do? Write her a check. He's wealthy, but $6,000 is still a lot of money to just give to someone he barely knows. He returns carrying 2 cups of tea on a wooden tray, along with a plate of what looks like homemade Korean cookies. The domesticity of it catches her off guard. She'd expected him to have staff, but he seems to be alone in the penthouse. "Do you live here by yourself?" she asks as he sets the tray down. "Most of the time. I have a housekeeper who comes twice a week, but I prefer my private space to remain private." He hands her a cup of tea, something floral and soothing, and sits across from her in an armchair, not next to her on the couch, giving her space. "Tell me exactly how much you owe total." 47,000 in medical debt. But the immediate problem is I need 12,000 by Friday to stop the garnishment and legal action. Minjun is quiet for a moment, his long fingers wrapped around his teacup. "I'll give you the money." Felicia's head snaps up. "What?" "I'll give you the money to stop the garnishment, and I'll pay off the rest of the debt as well." Her heart leaps and sinks simultaneously. "I can't accept that. I'd never be able to pay you back." "Then don't think of it as a loan. Think of it as..." "Charity." The word comes out sharper than she intends. "I didn't come here for a handout, Minjun. I don't know why I came here." "You came here because you're out of options and you knew I would help." His voice is gentle but firm. "There's no shame in that. But if you won't accept it as a gift, then let me offer you something else." Felicia waits, her chest tight. Minjun leans forward slightly, his elbows on his knees. "Work for me. I'll give you the money you need right now today to stop the legal action. And you'll work for me for 6 months to pay it back. I'll pay you well, enough to cover your living expenses and make payments toward the debt. At the end of 6 months, we'll reassess." She blinks at him, trying to process. "Work for you doing what? I already installed your sound system." "I have business interests that require technical expertise. Audio surveillance, counter-surveillance, private security installations. Your skills are exactly what I need." He pauses. "But I need to be honest with you about what you'd be getting into." "What kind of business interests?" Felicia asks, even though part of her doesn't want to know. Minjun sets down his tea and meets her eyes directly. "My family has been in California for 3 generations. We started with import-export, then expanded into property management, private security consulting, and various other legitimate businesses. But we operate in a world that values discretion and loyalty above everything else." "The Korean Business Network," Felicia says, remembering what she'd overheard at the Atherton event. "Yes, we're not criminals, Felicia. Everything we do is legal. But the people I work with, the families I'm connected to, we handle our business privately. We don't trust outsiders. We don't use outside contractors for sensitive work. Which is why I need someone in-house for technical installations." "Sensitive work like what?" "Secure communication systems. Counter-surveillance sweeps to ensure our spaces aren't compromised. Setting up encrypted networks. Nothing illegal, but everything confidential." He watches her carefully, gauging her reaction. I won't lie to you, there are risks. If you work for me, you'll be entering a world where information is currency and loyalty is everything. Some people might see you as a weakness because you're not part of the traditional families. Is that why those men at the Atherton event seemed tense? Felicia asks. Because you're making changes they don't like. Minjun's eyebrows rise slightly. You're observant. Yes, I'm trying to modernize how we operate, bring us more fully into legitimate business. Some of the older generation thinks I'm too American, too willing to break with tradition. It creates tension. Felicia processes this. It sounds dangerous, but also not as bad as she'd feared. And you think I can help with this? A girl from Oakland who installs speakers for a living. I think you're incredibly skilled at something I need. I think you're smart and observant and trustworthy. And I think you deserve a chance to breathe instead of drowning. His voice softens. I'm not trying to trap you, Felicia. I'm offering you a way out of an impossible situation. If you don't want to take it, I'll still help you with the immediate debt. But I'd like you to consider working for me. She stares into her tea, watching the leaves swirl at the bottom of the cup. Every instinct tells her this is complicated and potentially dangerous. But every practical bone in her body knows she's out of options. Why me? She asks quietly. You could hire anyone, someone with security clearances and professional credentials. Why do you want me specifically? Minjun is silent for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is soft and honest. Because when you fell asleep on my couch 3 weeks ago, you looked peaceful, like you'd finally stopped running long enough to rest. I haven't seen someone look like that in a long time. It reminded me that life isn't supposed to be constant warfare. He pauses, seeming to choose his words carefully. And because I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me. Power, connections, money, status. You didn't even want to accept extra payment for exceptional work. You fell asleep because you were exhausted, not because you were trying to manipulate me. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Felicia's throat tightens. She thinks about her mother, about the promise she made to not let debt define her life. Maybe this is the universe offering her a way to keep that promise. 6 months, she says finally. I'll work for you for 6 months, but I pay back every penny of what you give me. This is a job, not charity. Minjun nods slowly, and something like relief crosses his face. Every penny, and Felicia, thank you for trusting me. They shake on it, and Felicia tries to ignore how her hand tingles where his skin touches hers, how his grip is strong but gentle, how this feels like jumping off a cliff and hoping someone catches her. Minjun makes a phone call in Korean, brief and to the point. Then he goes to a safe hidden behind a piece of art on the wall and returns with stacks of cash. $12,000 in $100 bills. Pay the debt collector tomorrow, he says, handing her the money. Get a receipt for everything. Then come to this address Monday morning at 9. He hands her another business card, this one with an address in San Jose. That's where you'll be working. Wear comfortable clothes. I'll have equipment and assignments ready for you. Felicia stares at the cash in her hands. It's more money than she's ever held at once. It's salvation and complication all wrapped together. I don't know what to say. Say you'll get some sleep this weekend. You look exhausted. She laughs, and it comes out shaky. You're the second person to tell me that. Then maybe you should listen. Minjun walks her to the door, and just before she leaves, he adds, Felicia, I meant what I said. No strings. If you decide after a week that this isn't for you, you can leave. The debt is already paid as far as I'm concerned. I don't quit jobs, she says firmly. Minjun smiles, and it transforms his face from handsome to devastating. I didn't think you did. As Felicia rides the bus home with $12,000 in her bag, she feels like she's standing at a crossroads. One path leads back to the grinding struggle she knows, the slow drowning in debt and exhaustion. The other path leads into Minjun's world, mysterious and potentially dangerous, but also offering something she hasn't had in years. Hope. She chooses hope. Friday morning, Felicia walks into the debt collection office with $12,000 in cash and a receipt book. Victor Brennan's face, when she counts out the money, is almost worth the stress of the past few weeks. He processes the payment with barely concealed surprise, providing her with documentation that the garnishment proceedings have been halted and her account is current. Walking out of that office feels like breathing for the first time in months. She spends the weekend in a daze, barely believing her life has changed so dramatically. She pays her rent in advance for the next 2 months. She buys groceries without calculating every dollar. She sleeps for 12 hours straight and wakes up feeling almost human. Monday morning, she arrives at the address Minjun gave her, a sleek office building in downtown San Jose. All glass and steel and modern architecture. The directory in the lobby lists various tech companies and consulting firms, but the 10th floor just says, private. The elevator requires a key card for the 10th floor. As Felicia is trying to figure out what to do, a well-dressed Korean woman in her 50s approaches. "You must be Felicia Richardson," the woman says in perfect, unaccented English. "I'm Grace Park, Mr. Min's executive assistant. Welcome." She hands Felicia a key card. "This will give you access to the 10th floor and your office. Let me show you around." The 10th floor is stunning. The main space is an open-concept office with state-of-the-art equipment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Silicon Valley, and a sleek conference room behind frosted glass. But there are also private offices along one wall, and Grace leads Felicia to one of them. "This is yours," Grace says, opening the door. Felicia steps inside and her jaw drops. The office is equipped with everything she could possibly need: professional-grade audio equipment, computers with top-tier specs, testing devices she's only dreamed of using, and organizational systems that make her current setup look like a child's toy box. "Mr. Min wants you to be comfortable and efficient," Grace explains. "Everything here is yours to use as needed. Your primary projects will be sent to you through encrypted email. Your salary will be deposited bi-weekly, and you'll receive benefits including health insurance, which I understand you currently lack." Felicia nods, still overwhelmed. "When do I start?" "Now, if you're ready. Your first assignment is already waiting." Grace gestures to the computer, which is displaying a login screen. "Your credentials are in this envelope. Change the password to something secure that only you know." After Grace leaves, Felicia sits at her new desk and logs into the system. Her first assignment is detailed and complex: installing a secure communication system in a private office building that Minjun's organization owns in Cupertino. The building houses various businesses, but the top floor is reserved for private meetings of the network families. The work is technical but straightforward, exactly the kind of challenge she loves. She spends the next 3 days doing site surveys, ordering equipment, and planning the installation. The budget she's given doesn't require her to cut corners or find cheap alternatives. She can actually do the job right. What's not straightforward is navigating the world Minjun operates in. On her 3rd day, while she's installing equipment in the Cupertino building, she meets some of Minjun's associates. They arrive for a meeting while she's working, men and women in expensive business attire who speak in a mix of Korean and English, their conversations dropping to whispers when they pass her. One woman, probably in her 40s, stops and introduces herself. "Ms. Park," she says, offering a hand. "I oversee some of Mr. Min's property holdings. You're the new technical specialist." "Yes, ma'am," Felicia replies, shaking her hand. Ms. Park's eyes are sharp and assessing. "You're very young, and you're not Korean." It's not quite an accusation, but it's definitely an observation loaded with judgment. Felicia straightens her spine. I'm very good at my job. I'm sure you are, or Mr. Min wouldn't have hired you. Ms. Park's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Just remember that in our world, discretion is more valuable than skill. What you see and hear in these buildings stays in these buildings. Understood. After Ms. Park leaves, Felicia realizes her hands are shaking slightly. The interaction felt like a test, or maybe a warning. She's entering a world where she's clearly an outsider, where her presence is tolerated because Min-jun vouches for her but not necessarily welcomed. She doesn't see Min-jun himself for the first 2 weeks. He communicates through Grace or encrypted emails, checking on her progress, answering technical questions, but maintaining professional distance. Part of her is relieved. It makes this feel like a real job rather than something more complicated. But another part of her wonders if he's avoiding her deliberately. Then, on a Friday evening, when she's finishing up a particularly complex installation in the San Jose office, Min-jun appears. Working late, he observes, leaning against the doorframe of her office. Felicia jumps slightly, not having heard him approach. He's wearing a suit, navy blue, impeccably tailored, and looks like he just came from an important meeting. But his tie is slightly loosened and his hair is a bit disheveled, making him look more approachable. I wanted to finish the calibration tonight so the system can run diagnostics over the weekend, she explains, gesturing to her laptop showing measurement data. Min-jun steps into her office, examining the equipment she's set up. You've done exceptional work. Grace showed me the reports. We've never had such thorough documentation. Pride warms her chest. Thank you. Have you eaten? He asks suddenly. No, I was going to grab something on the way home. Come to dinner with me. It's phrased like a request, but Felicia senses it's more of an expectation. She saves her work and follows him out to the parking garage where a sleek black car is waiting. Not ostentatious, but clearly expensive. Min-jun drives them himself, no chauffeur, heading toward Cupertino. They end up at a small Korean restaurant tucked into a strip mall, the kind of place that's invisible unless you know it's there. But the moment they walk in, the owner rushes over, greeting Min-jun like family. They're led to a private room in the back, away from other diners. You come here often? Felicia asks as they settle onto cushions at a low table. My grandmother used to bring me here when I was a child. The owner's family and mine have known each other for generations. Min-jun orders in Korean, a rapid exchange with the owner that includes laughter and what sounds like gentle teasing. I ordered a variety. I hope you like Korean food. I've had it a few times. I like it. The food arrives quickly. Bibimbap, bulgogi, kimchi, and several dishes Felicia doesn't recognize but that smell amazing. They eat in comfortable silence for a while, and Felicia realizes how hungry she actually is. How are you adjusting? Min-jun asks eventually. To the work, to the office, to everything. It's different than I expected, Felicia admits. The work itself is great. Dream projects, unlimited budget, actual time to do things right. But the people are suspicious of you, Min-jun finishes. I know, you're an outsider in a world that doesn't typically accept outsiders. Ms. Park made that pretty clear. Ms. Park is old guard. She believes in traditional ways, Koreans working with Koreans, families intermarrying to strengthen alliances, business staying within established circles. He pours them both tea from a ceramic pot. I respect the traditions, but I also think we need to evolve. Hire the best people regardless of background. Expand beyond our comfort zones. Is that why you hired me? To make a point? I hired you because you're talented and I trust you. The fact that it also makes a point is secondary. Min-jun meets her eyes across the table. But I won't pretend it's easy. Some people will see you as my weakness. They'll test us to see if I'll back down. Will you? Felicia asks quietly. No. The certainty in his voice sends a shiver down her spine. They finish dinner while Minjun tells her more about the network, the different families, their various businesses, the unspoken rules that govern everything. It's fascinating and intimidating in equal measure. As they're leaving, Minjun's phone buzzes. He glances at it and his expression tightens. I need to handle something. Can I drop you at home? I can take the bus. I'd prefer to know you got home safely. During the drive to Oakland, Felicia watches the city lights blur past and works up the courage to ask the question that's been nagging at her. Minjun, why did you really help me? And please don't say it's just because I fell asleep on your couch. He's quiet for a long moment, his hands steady on the steering wheel. Do you ever feel like you're living a life that was chosen for you instead of one you chose? The question surprises her. Every day since my mom got sick. I was born into this world. I didn't choose it. I was raised to take over my father's position, educated at the right schools, introduced to the right people. I've never made a decision that was purely mine. He glances at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. And then I met you, someone who's fighting so hard for a life you did choose, even when everything is working against you. It reminded me what it looks like to actually want something. What do you want? Felicia asks softly. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to figure it out. When he drops her off at her apartment building, their hands brush as she's unbuckling her seatbelt. The touch sends electricity up her arm, and from the way Minjun's breath catches, he feels it too. Good night, Felicia. Good night. She watches his car disappear into the Oakland night and realizes with startling clarity that this job, this arrangement, is already becoming more complicated than either of them planned. November arrives with a cold snap that makes San Francisco feel more like winter than fall. Felicia has settled into her role, completing several major installations and earning grudging respect from some of Minjun's associates. The work is challenging and satisfying, and for the first time in years, she's not exhausted all the time. She's also spending more time with Minjun. Not deliberately, or at least, that's what they both pretend. But they end up having dinner after late meetings, or he stops by her office to discuss projects and stays to talk about everything else. She learns about his childhood caught between Korean and American cultures, the pressure of expectations, the loneliness of leadership. He learns about her mother's strength, her own dreams of someday opening an audio engineering studio, her fear that she's forgotten how to want things just for herself. The attraction between them grows like a slow fire, building heat with every shared glance and accidental touch, but neither of them acts on it. The professional boundary feels important, necessary, even as it becomes harder to maintain. Then everything changes on a cold November evening. Felicia is working late in the downtown San Jose office, finishing up a security audit Minjun requested. Most people have gone home, but the conference room lights are still on. She can hear voices, tense, arguing in Korean. She's packing up her equipment when the conference room door opens and two people step out, still deep in conversation. She recognizes them, Mr. Kang, one of Minjun's senior associates who handles property acquisitions, and Ms. Park, the woman who'd questioned her presence weeks ago. They don't notice Felicia in her office with the lights dimmed, working by the glow of her laptop. Their voices carry clearly in the quiet office space. They switch to English mid-conversation, probably assuming they're alone. Can't wait much longer, Mr. Kang says, his voice tight with frustration. Minjun is making moves that will lock us out completely if we don't act soon. I know, Ms. Park replies, but we need majority support from the family heads before we make our move. 3 are still loyal to him. Because they remember his father, but his father is dead and Min-jun is weak, too American, too willing to bring in outsiders. There's a pause and Felicia holds her breath. Like that girl he hired. The audio tech, Ms. Park's voice drips with disdain. She's just a tool. He's using her to prove a point about modernization. But she's also his weakness. He's too protective of her, too invested in her success. Then we use her, Mr. Kang says coldly. If she finds out what we're really planning, it could work to our advantage. Either she tells Min-jun and he looks paranoid and unstable for believing an outsider over his own people, or she doesn't and he remains ignorant until it's too late. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we let her overhear just enough to make her suspicious. When she goes to Min-jun, we deny everything and point out how he's letting a girl he barely knows poison his mind against his own organization. The family heads will see it as proof he's not fit to lead. That's risky. What if nothing? We've been planning this for months. 3 of the family heads are already with us. We just need one more to have majority support to call for a leadership vote. Once we have that, we remove Min-jun from his position and install someone more appropriate. Felicia's blood runs cold. She sits frozen in her dark office, her heart pounding so hard she's sure they can hear it. They're planning a coup. They're planning to use her to undermine Min-jun. Ms. Park's voice drops lower. And if Min-jun refuses to step down quietly, then he'll step down the hard way. This is business, Ms. Park. Sentiment has no place in leadership decisions. They move away, their voices fatting as they head toward the elevators. Felicia waits until she hears the elevator doors close before she moves. Her hands are shaking as she pulls out her phone. She calls Min-jun immediately. He answers on the second ring, his voice warm. Felicia, We need to talk, in person, right now. She's proud that her voice comes out steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. There's a pause, and when Min-jun speaks again, his tone has shifted to something harder, more alert. Where are you? Still at the office. Stay there, lock yourself in. I'm 20 minutes away. He makes it in 15. Felicia hears him before she sees him, rapid footsteps, the sound of the stairwell door opening. He must have run up rather than wait for the elevator. He appears at her office door slightly breathless, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up. What happened? He demands, stepping into her office and closing the door behind him. Felicia tells him everything she heard, word for word. She watches Min-jun's face as she talks, seeing his expression shift from concerned to cold fury. Kang and Park, he says quietly when she finishes. They've been positioning themselves for months. I knew they were ambitious, but I didn't think they'd move this fast. Move to do what exactly? Felicia asks, though she's afraid she already knows. Min-jun walks to her window, staring out at the San Jose skyline. To force me out, take over the network. My family has led for 3 generations, but there are factions who think I'm too soft, too American, too willing to break with tradition. They want someone more aligned with old ways, someone more ruthless. And they think I'm a distraction. They think you're a weakness. Min-jun turns back to her, his eyes intense. But they're wrong. You're the only person in months who's told me the truth without an agenda. Everyone else wants something from me, power, position, favor. You just want to do good work and pay off your debt. His phone buzzes. He glances at it and his jaw tightens. There's an emergency meeting called for tomorrow night. All family heads. They're making their move. What are you going to do? Felicia asks, standing and moving closer to him. Min-jun looks at her for a long moment. I'm going to fight, but first, I need to keep you safe. If they're willing to use you as a pawn, they might try something more direct. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. Felicia, No, you gave me a chance when no one else would. You helped me when you didn't have to. I'm not running now. She crosses her arms. Besides, I might be useful. They think I'm just some girl who installs speakers. Let them underestimate me. Min-jun's expression softens slightly. You're not just some girl. You never were. The air between them feels charged, heavy with everything they've been avoiding saying. Min-jun takes a step closer, and Felicia's breath catches. I shouldn't want this, he murmurs, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. It makes everything more complicated. Then don't think, Felicia whispers, her heart racing. Just for a minute, don't think. He kisses her slow at first, tentative, like he's giving her a chance to pull away. But Felicia leans in instead, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepens, months of tension and unspoken feelings pouring out. When they finally break apart, they're both breathing hard. Felicia, Min-jun says, his forehead resting against hers. If we do this. I know, it complicates everything, but I think we're already complicated. He laughs softly, and the sound makes her smile. Yes, we are definitely complicated. They spend the night at Min-jun's penthouse, planning their strategy. Min-jun makes calls in Korean, reaching out to the family heads he trusts, building his coalition. Felicia uses her technical skills to pull together evidence they'll need, documentation of financial irregularities in Kang and Park's divisions, communication records showing their coordination. As dawn breaks over San Francisco, they're ready. Min-jun insists Felicia stay at his penthouse for safety leading up to the meeting. She works remotely, using his secure network to continue gathering evidence while he handles the political maneuvering required to maintain his position. On the second night, after a series of tense phone calls, Min-jun finally lets himself relax slightly. They're sitting in his living room, the same couch where this all started, and he opens up completely. I never wanted this, he admits, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. When my father died 2 years ago, I inherited everything. The businesses, the responsibilities, the expectations. I was supposed to just step into his role and continue his legacy exactly as he'd built it. But you wanted to do things differently, Felicia says. I wanted to evolve, to make sure we could survive in a changing world. My father's generation built empires through old-world networks and cultural connections. That still matters, but it's not enough anymore. We need to modernize, diversify, actually integrate into American business culture instead of just existing parallel to it. He turns to look at her. That's why I hired you, not just because you're talented, though you are, but because you represent the future I'm trying to build. One where we can work with anyone, where loyalty and skill matter more than last names and family trees. Felicia reaches for his hand. I'm glad you did, even though it's complicated. When I saw you asleep on that couch, Min-jun continues, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, you looked so peaceful despite everything you were carrying. I realized I hadn't felt peace in years, maybe never, and I wanted to protect that for you. Selfish, maybe. It's not selfish, Felicia says firmly. You gave me a chance to breathe, to actually live instead of just surviving. Do you know how rare that is? Their eyes meet, and the vulnerability in Min-jun's expression takes her breath away. He's always so controlled, so carefully composed. But right now, he just looks tired and young and human. I'm afraid, he admits quietly, of losing everything my family built, of letting people down, of being crushed by expectations I never asked for. I'm afraid too, Felicia says, of being the reason you lose everything, of not being strong enough to survive in your world, of caring too much about someone I was only supposed to work for. When did it become more than work? Min-jun asks. Probably that first morning, when you made me coffee instead of being angry that I fell asleep. You looked at me like I mattered, Not like I was just some service worker who inconvenienced you. No one had looked at me like that in a long time. You matter, Minjun says, his hand moving to cup her face. More than is probably wise, but I can't seem to care about wise anymore. They kiss again, deeper this time, less tentative. When they break apart, Felicia makes a decision. I'm coming to the meeting tomorrow, she says, leaving no room for argument. If they think I'm a weakness, let's prove them wrong. Let's show them I'm an asset. Minjun studies her face. It could get ugly. I'm tougher than I look. I know you are. That's what scares me. The next evening, Felicia insists on attending the meeting. She dresses carefully, professional but not trying too hard, her natural hair in a sleek bun, minimal makeup. She wants to look competent and confident, not like someone trying to fit into a world where she doesn't belong. The meeting is held in a private room at an upscale hotel in Hillsborough, one of the wealthiest communities in America. When Minjun enters with Felicia at his side, the shock on several faces is priceless. The room is set up with a long table where the family heads sit, 5 men and 1 woman, all Korean, all over 50. Around the perimeter are chairs for senior associates. Mr. Kang and Ms. Park are already seated, and their expressions when they see Felicia are a mix of surprise and calculation. Minjun pulls out a chair for Felicia at the main table, a deliberate statement. She's not sitting with the associates, she's sitting as his equal. Shall we begin? Minjun says calmly, taking his seat at the head of the table. Mr. Kang clears his throat. Minjun, I don't think it's appropriate to have an outsider present for family business. Ms. Richardson is my technical security director. She has clearance for all our business operations. Minjun's voice is pleasant but firm. Unless you have concerns about security breaches. The implication hangs in the air. Mr. Kang's eyes narrow, but he says nothing. The meeting proceeds with surface-level business for the first 30 minutes, reports on various holdings, discussion of upcoming investments. But the tension is palpable, everyone waiting for the real confrontation. Finally, Ms. Park speaks up. I'd like to address concerns that have been raised about the direction of our organization. What concerns? Minjun asks mildly. Concerns that we're abandoning tradition, bringing in outsiders, making decisions that prioritize growth over loyalty to our community. Ms. Park's gaze flicks to Felicia. Some feel we're losing our identity. Identity is important, Minjun agrees. But identity that can't adapt dies. Our parents and grandparents built this network by adapting to a new country while honoring their heritage. I'm doing the same thing, honoring what they built while ensuring we survive the next generation. Mr. Kang leans forward. By hearing people with no connection to our families, by sharing our business secrets with strangers, by hearing the best talent regardless of background, by modernizing our security and operations, by making sure we're not just surviving but thriving. Minjun's voice remains calm, but there's steel underneath. Unless you'd prefer we continue with outdated systems that leave us vulnerable to actual security threats. What security threats? One of the family heads asks, Mr. Lee, an older man who's generally been neutral toward Minjun. Minjun looks at Felicia. She stands, pulling out a tablet and connecting it to the room's display screen. Over the past 3 weeks, I've conducted security audits of all our major properties. Felicia begins, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I found multiple vulnerabilities, outdated encryption, compromised communication channels, even physical security gaps that could allow unauthorized surveillance. She brings up a series of technical displays, walking the room through specific findings. She can see comprehension dawning on several faces. They didn't realize how exposed they were. I've implemented fixes for most of these issues, Felicia continues. But in the process, I also found something else. She switches to a new screen showing financial records. There are discrepancies in several accounts. Money being moved in ways that don't match the official books. Small amounts at first, but increasing over the past 6 months. Mr. Kang's face goes pale. Ms. Park sits very still. These discrepancies, Minjun picks up the narrative, all trace back to accounts controlled by Mr. Kang and Ms. Park. A total of nearly $200,000 diverted from organizational funds into private accounts. The room erupts. Family heads demanding explanations, associates looking shocked, Mr. Kang and Ms. Park trying to talk over each other. Minjun waits for the noise to die down before continuing. I didn't want to believe it. I've worked with both of you for years, but the evidence is clear. You've been skimming funds while simultaneously planning to undermine my leadership by claiming I'm fiscally irresponsible and too trusting of outsiders. He looks around the room. The irony, of course, is that it was an outsider, someone with no loyalty to our family politics, who uncovered the truth, because she was looking at systems objectively rather than protecting anyone's reputation. Ms. Park stands abruptly. This is a setup. That girl has manipulated you. Sit down, one of the family heads says coldly. It's Mrs. H. Wang, the woman who heads one of the oldest families in the network. We've seen the evidence. It's comprehensive and damning. The room goes silent. In this world, Felicia has learned loyalty is everything. Financial betrayal is unforgivable. It doesn't matter how legitimate Mr. Kang and Ms. Park's concerns about modernization might be. They stole from the organization, and that's a line that can't be uncrossed. The verdict is swift. Mr. Kang and Ms. Park are stripped of their positions and expelled from the network. Their business interests will be absorbed by other families. It's a complete and total fall from power. As they're escorted out, Ms. Park turns to Felicia with pure hatred in her eyes. You don't belong here. You never will. Felicia meets her gaze steadily. Maybe not, but I'm here anyway. After they leave, the meeting continues for another hour, with the family heads reaffirming their support for Minjun's leadership. By the end, it's clear he's not just survived the challenge, he's emerged stronger. As people are leaving, Mrs. H. Wang approaches Felicia. You did well, Ms. Richardson. You have good instincts. Thank you, ma'am. Minjun is fortunate to have someone so capable and trustworthy. Mrs. H. Wang's eyes are sharp and knowing. Don't let him take you for granted. I won't. In the car ride back to San Francisco, Minjun is quiet. Felicia can see the tension slowly draining from his shoulders as the adrenaline wears off. You were incredible, he says finally. We were incredible, Felicia corrects. You handled the politics, I just handled the technical proof. You handled much more than that. You gave me the ammunition I needed to fight back. You stood beside me when you could have walked away to avoid the conflict. He reaches over and takes her hand. Thank you. You gave me my life back, Felicia says simply. This was the least I could do. But they both know it's more than that. What started as a job, a transaction, has become something neither of them expected. Something real. 3 months later, Felicia stands in the Pacific Heights penthouse, but everything is different now. The view is the same, San Francisco glittering below, the bay stretching dark and vast to the horizon. But she's not an exhausted contractor who accidentally fell asleep anymore. She's not drowning in debt or working 3 jobs or running herself into the ground just to survive. The medical debt is gone, paid off completely with her legitimate earnings from a job that actually pays what she's worth. She's no longer working 3 jobs, no longer running on empty. She has savings. She has health insurance. She has a future that extends beyond the next bill payment. More than that, she has respect. The network families have accepted her, not just as Min-jun's partner, but as a valuable asset in her own right. She's become the head of their technical security division, a position that comes with real authority and a salary that still makes her want to cry with relief when she thinks about how far she's come. Min-jun appears behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist as they look out at the San Francisco skyline together. He's dressed casually, black joggers and a soft shirt, looking relaxed in a way he never did when they first met. The tension that used to sit in his shoulders has eased. He's found a balance between honoring his heritage and forging his own path. "Regret staying?" he asks softly, his breath warm against her ear. Felicia leans back against him, solid and steady and home. Not for a second. Their relationship is no longer a secret or a complication to navigate carefully. After the confrontation with Mr. Kang and Ms. Park, Min-jun made it clear to the network that Felicia was his partner in every sense of the word. There had been some resistance from the older generation, but Mrs. H. Wang had shut it down with a single cutting remark. Min-jun's father married for politics and was miserable. Let the boy marry for love. Marry. The word had hung in the air between them for weeks afterward, unspoken but present in every shared glance and touch. "You know what I think about sometimes," Felicia says now, turning in Min-jun's arms to face him. "What?" "That night I fell asleep on your couch. If I'd woken up and left before you saw me, none of this would have happened. I'd probably still be drowning in debt, working myself to death, surviving instead of living." Min-jun's hands frame her face gently. "I would have found a way back to you. I think I knew that morning that you were going to change my life. I just didn't know how completely." "Changed it how?" "You reminded me what it feels like to actually want something instead of just accepting what's expected. You showed me that strength isn't about never needing help. It's about being brave enough to accept it when you do." He pauses, his dark eyes searching hers. "You gave me peace when I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without the weight of everyone's expectations." "You gave me the same thing," Felicia whispers. "You saw me when I was invisible. You helped me when you didn't have to. You made me believe I could be more than just someone surviving." "You were always more," Min-jun says firmly. "I just gave you the space to prove it to yourself." He takes a small step back, and Felicia's breath catches when she sees him reach into his pocket. He pulls out a small velvet box, and her heart starts racing. "I know it's fast," Min-jun says, opening the box to reveal a ring elegant and understated, a single diamond set in a simple platinum band. "And I know we did everything backwards. Job first, friendship second, relationship third, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He takes her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Marry me, not because you owe me anything, you don't. Not because it makes political sense, though Mrs. H. Wang will be insufferably smug about being right. Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because you gave me peace when I'd forgotten what it felt like. Because you're the best decision I never planned to make." Felicia's eyes fill with tears, but she's smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Min-jun slides the ring onto her finger, and it fits perfectly. Of course it does. He probably had it custom made, probably spent weeks getting every detail exactly right because that's who he is. Thoughtful and careful and devoted in ways that still take her breath away. "I love you," she says, the words feeling both enormous and simple. "I don't think I've said that out loud yet, but I do. I love you." "I love you too," Min-jun replies, pulling her into a kiss that tastes like happiness and promise and home. "I have since that first morning when you woke up looking confused and mortified on my couch." They stay wrapped in each other's arms as the sun sets over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Felicia thinks about her mother, about the promise she made to not let debt define her life. She hopes somehow her mother knows that her daughter kept that promise, that she found not just survival but joy, not just escape from debt but a future worth building. "What are you thinking?" Minjun asks, reading the emotion on her face. "I'm thinking about my mom, wishing she could have met you. She would have liked you." "Tell me about her." So Felicia does, sharing stories about her mother's strength and humor and fierce determination to give her daughter a better life even when she was dying. Minjun listens without interrupting, his arms a steady presence around her. "She sounds remarkable," he says when Felicia finishes, "like someone else I know." "I'm not that remarkable, I just got lucky. I fell asleep on the right couch." Minjun shakes his head. "You didn't get lucky. You worked yourself to exhaustion trying to honor your mother's sacrifice. You were brave enough to ask for help when you needed it. You were strong enough to enter a world where you didn't belong and prove yourself anyway. That's not luck, Felicia. That's who you are." Later that evening, they sit on that same leather couch, the one where everything started, and plan their future. Minjun wants a small wedding, just family and close friends. Felicia agrees, having no desire for anything elaborate. They talk about eventually buying a house together, something with space for her audio equipment and his need for a home office. They talk about the organization and where they want to take it, about balancing tradition with innovation. But mostly they just exist together, comfortable in the silence, finding peace in each other's presence. Felicia realizes that sometimes the best things in life happen when you're too tired to keep your walls up. Sometimes you fall asleep on the right couch and wake up to find someone who's been waiting to cover you, not just with a blanket, but with his whole heart. Sometimes you take a job because you're desperate, and it turns into a future you never imagined, but can't imagine living without. Sometimes the Korean Mafia boss with the penthouse in Pacific Heights and the weight of generational expectations on his shoulders is also just a man who makes perfect coffee and looks at you like you're the most important person in his world. And sometimes, just sometimes, everything works out exactly the way it's supposed to. 3 years later, Felicia stands in a different space, the audio engineering studio she finally opened with Minjun's support and her own hard-earned expertise. The studio is in a converted warehouse in Oakland, not far from her old apartment. It's state-of-the-art, everything she ever dreamed of having. She's training 2 new apprentices, both young women from backgrounds similar to hers. Women who need a chance, who have talent but not connections or resources. Felicia gives them both, the way Minjun once gave her both. Her phone buzzes with a text from Minjun. "Dinner tonight, I have news." She smiles and texts back. "Always, I have news too." That evening, over Korean food at their favorite restaurant, the same one where he first took her years ago, they share their news. "The network voted to expand into community investment," Minjun says, his eyes bright with excitement. "Funding small businesses, supporting education initiatives, actually giving back instead of just protecting our own interests. It's everything I've been working toward." "That's amazing," Felicia says, genuinely proud. "He's transformed the organization in ways no one thought possible, honoring tradition while building something better." "What's your news?" he asks. Felicia takes his hand and places it on her still flat stomach. "We're having a baby." Minjun's face goes through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, joy, wonder, and something that looks like fear. "A baby? I'm going to be a father." "In about 6 months, yes." He stands abruptly, pulls her to her feet, and kisses her right there in the restaurant while other diners smile and the owner cheers. When they finally break apart, Minjun has tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispers, "for everything, for falling asleep on my couch, for trusting me, for building this life with me." "Thank you for covering me with your heart," Felicia replies, "and never taking it back." As they walk out of the restaurant hand in hand, Felicia thinks about how far they've both come. From that first morning when she woke up confused and mortified to this moment of perfect happiness, it wasn't easy, it wasn't simple, but it was worth every complicated, messy, beautiful step. Because some people are worth fighting for, some love is worth the risk, and some debts, the ones paid in trust and vulnerability and shared dreams, are the kind you're grateful to owe. Felicia fell asleep on Minjun's couch, exhausted and alone, drowning in debt and desperation. She woke up covered in cashmere and found a man who saw past her circumstances to her worth. And now, years later, she's still covered by that same care, still held by those same steady hands, still home in a love that started with an accidental nap and turned into forever. The Korean Mafia Boss and the audio tech who fell asleep on his couch. It sounds like the beginning of a story, and it was. But it's also the middle and the ending, the whole beautiful, improbable, perfect tale of two people who found each other when they both needed saving. And they lived, not happily ever after in some fairy tale way, but really and fully and beautifully ever after in the way real people do, with challenges and growth and love that deepens with every passing day. Felicia Richardson, who once couldn't imagine a future beyond the next bill payment, now has a future so bright she sometimes has to squint to believe it's real. All because one night, exhausted and desperate, she fell asleep on the right couch. And the right man decided to cover her, not just with a blanket, but with his whole heart.